Tonight's program is sponsored by the Boston Vegetarian Society and by the Friends of the Library. We're just so grateful for everybody's support. So glad everybody could join us tonight. Usually I spend some time sitting here talking about how great the Friends are, and they are super fabulous. I love to talk about how fabulous the people at BVS are as well, Boston Vegetarian Society, and I'm so grateful for their support. So thank you so much for being here and for helping us out, getting the word out about tonight.
I'm Colin, and I've been teaching cooking classes with the Thomas Crane Library for a number of months now, and also with Boston Vegetarian Society. I've been vegan now for 25 years, and so I've been teaching classes, cooking classes for about 4 years now, trying to share some of the recipes that I've come up with over the years. I have two boys who are now 18 and 21, and so trying to feed them healthy recipes has always been a fun challenge for me. And so when I can develop recipes that I can get them to eat healthy food, then those are always winners. So last year I did come out with the Healthy Vegan Cookbook. My publisher would be very upset with me if I did not share that. So Healthy Vegan Cookbook has all of the recipes for tonight, plus lots of many other ones in it, and that is on Amazon. So let's see, there's 200 recipes in there. Tonight we're going to be doing fresh whole food soups. So one of the aims that I try to do is to use as much fresh whole food ingredients as possible. Try to limit the processed food that I eat, and so we're going to be doing 3 different recipes tonight for that. The 3 recipes we're going to do today are creamy tomato soup, we have Lebanese red lentil soup, and then we have a wonderful fragrant Thai coconut soup, which is one of my favorites. So as far as the format goes for tonight, you all don't need to actually watch me cook these soups, so I'll prepare everything, we'll go over the recipes, and then the last thing that I need to do is put it in a pot and put it on the stove. And unfortunately, since I can't hand out samples to everybody for tonight through the screen, then I have to eat it all myself. I'm sorry. So I will do all the cooking later on and spare all of you that. So one thing I wanted to point out here, with me as always, the Vitamix. Vitamix is a high-power blender. It is fairly expensive for you to buy it new. But you don't need a Vitamix for these recipes. You can use like a NutriBullet or a Ninja or something like that. One of the benefits with the Vitamix is that it's very, very powerful, so it can blend, things like these soups really, really well. And I wish I was getting paid by them, but sadly I'm not. So I'm just saying that to you as someone who does a lot of cooking. This is the one appliance that I love to use. You can get them used. You can get them on Craigslist, eBay. They're a lot cheaper that way. You can get them refurbished. So I love Vitamix, but if you don't have that, then you can use more of a mid-level blender. If you just have a regular Oster, $35 Oster blender, it's going to have a harder time with some of these things, but it would work. But I would recommend getting a good blender. All right, so first recipe we're going to do is creamy tomato soup. So basically my spin on this is trying to do it in a healthy way without using oil, trying to keep the calories down and using whole food healthy ingredients. So this is one where one of the best compliments I got in one of my cooking classes after somebody tried a sample of this, they said, "It actually tastes like what it is." Which is so bizarre because tomato soup is supposed to taste like tomatoes. But you buy that stuff in the can, who knows how long it's been on the shelf. If you use fresh tomatoes, then it tastes so much better. And also, using the powerful blender, then you don't have to skin it. You don't have to, peel the tomatoes. You don't have to get the seeds out or anything. You want all of that in there. It's all nutritious. So that's why we go from a whole food perspective. So all right, open that up. We'll get started. So Clayton was saying the recipes will either be in the chat now or in a little bit, so you guys don't have to write all this down. The first ingredient I put in is a lot of fresh tomatoes. So you can see there's a lot there. It called for 7 in total. Actually, the Vitamix, if I use all 7 at the same time, it's too much. It's too much capacity. So I'm actually going to blend in about 5 with some of the other ingredients, and we'll go from there. But so I'll start with about 5 tomatoes worth. You can see seeds are still there. It's all peeled still. I really like to use the vine tomatoes. I don't buy those big beefsteak tomatoes. Just because, like, to me, they don't really have any taste. They don't smell very good. They don't have any smell at all because it's like plastic. But if you buy the ones that are on the vine, they smell fresh. They smell nice and ripe. So that's what I like to use. So I'm going to go ahead, blend just the 5 first, so that I can fit everything else in there, because the Vitamix just isn't big enough. So. I do want to point out, these 3 recipes are not raw, especially tomatoes have a very raw taste to them if you don't cook them. So if you are a raw foodist, then maybe one of the Girl Scout cookie smoothies, or smoothie videos. We got lots of raw food there, but tonight everything's going to get cooked. If you don't have a Vitamix, then I would recommend keeping this in the blender for like a good 5 minutes. Just really let it break down all the seeds and everything. This is supposed to be a really creamy soup. You don't want, little bits of anything in it. So I'm just going to run this for another little bit. It makes a wonderful amount of noise first thing in the morning when I'm making smoothies. If I'm trying to get my kids up, and
great alarm clock. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So there's 5 of the tomatoes. Now I'm going to add the last 2 here, and then we're going to add the rest of the ingredients. So I have 1 medium yellow onion that's just been roughly chopped. You put it in the Vitamix. The Vitamix does all the work for you. I always kind of joke I'm a very lazy cook, so if I can have the appliance do most of the work for me, then that's really the best. We're going to put in 1 medium carrot. I broke up into pieces here because why not? Because it just kind of hangs out in there, adds some extra nutrition. You don't taste it. It does help to make it a little bit sweeter as well, so that's a nice benefit. Let's see, I have 4 cloves of garlic here. Just put them in raw. Don't need to chop them up. I'm going to put in half a cup of cashews. So this is one of the things that makes the soup really creamy. Besides blending it for a long time, normally creamy tomato soup, like if you bought something in the can, it actually has a lot of oil in it. And the oil is one of the things that really gives it the really smooth, velvety consistency that it has. So, what is the oil doing? It is actually the fat in the oil that is making it, nice and creamy and smooth like that. If you use something like cashews, which are a very soft nut, they blend very easily, it actually gives you the same kind of texture. It has the same kind of texture benefits as using oil, but it's a whole food ingredient. It's a lot easier for most people to be able to digest this. It has a lot less calories in it than if you were to use like a cup of oil. So there's a half a cup of raw cashews. I'll put in there. So, years ago, I've been vegan for a long time, but years ago, I started hearing more and more about whole food, plant-based eating. So not using processed ingredients, not using any oil. And, I used to use a lot of oil myself. So when I heard that, I said, oh, how could you have the same kind of consistency and texture? But one of the secrets is using nuts. So you can do it with that, or you can use coconut as well. That would work as well, but we're jumping ahead. We'll get to that in a little while. So I'm going to put in 1 cup of water here.
So there was a question, Colin, about whether you soak your cashews or not.
Usually I do not. If a Vitamix, you really don't need to. As far as making sure that it can blend in fine, then you don't have to soak it. If you have a high power blender, if you have a regular blender, you probably would want to soak it in hot water for about 15 minutes or so, just kind of soften those up a little bit further. Some people have a sensitivity to nuts. I'm not talking about the people who are allergic. but just sometimes people have a kind of a stomach sensitivity to it. If you do, then you can soak them overnight, and that actually removes a lot of the phytic acid, which is what some people have a hard time with digesting nuts. Okay, like I said, if you're allergic to nuts, then it's not going to help. So don't have it.
Yeah, and if you're not using a Vitamix, you may need to soak them because, yeah, you need a high-powered blender to be able to do that for sure.
Yeah, but if you have a Vitamix, no problem at all. All right, so I'm going to put in 1 teaspoon of salt, and I have a half a teaspoon of black pepper. The brand that I like to use for salt is Redmond Real Salt. So that's more of a specialty product. You would find that at Whole Foods usually, or you can order it online. I actually just bought a bag of it last night. I think it's like $10 or something for, the bag. It takes me months and months to go through it, but it actually has the highest nutrient content of any kind of salt on the market. It's really one of the least processed types of salt. So if you're going to use salt, I would recommend that. And I also am not paid by them as well. I wish I were. So 1 teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of black pepper. Put that in. And I'm going to put in 2 medjool dates. So anybody who's seen my classes before knows that I like to use dates as a form of, as a whole food form of sweetener. So instead of using processed sugar or maple syrup or agave or anything, most of the recipes that I do use dates. As far as the sugar goes, dates have all the fiber, so it really kind of slows it down as it comes into your bloodstream, so you don't get the blood sugar spikes like you do with sugar. So I'll put that in there. And let's see.
Colin, there's a couple of people that are asking me if you could repeat the name of the salt. I didn't catch it either.
Yep. Redmond Real Salt is the name of the brand. If you want to hold on a second, I can grab the bag. Hold on.
Sure, that'd be awesome. Thank you, Colin. I'm sorry to interrupt the flow, but lots of folks. Yep.
I haven't been able to get the wireless headphone earbuds to work. So this is the bag.
Redmond Real Salt. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. And this is really the only kind that I like to use. Like I said, it's about $10. This is a 26-ounce bag. I mean, this takes me months and months to go through. So, if you're someone who doesn't want to use any salt at all, then you can skip that. That's fine. I like to be able to add that in for a little extra taste. So I'm going to go ahead and blend this, and then if people have any questions or comments, then you can let me know. All right. Yeah, people ask me if I use sea salt, and so technically, yes, but it's from the sea that is a million years ago. So, all right, so I'm going to pour the rest of the soup in here. That's all blended up nicely. And one of the last things I'm going to add is some fresh thyme. So if you don't have access to fresh thyme in the supermarket, then you could just use dried. It's okay. But what I like to do is put in some sprigs of the fresh thyme and then take it out at the end. So I usually put in about 5. I like to have it nice and strong, so I'll put in that much. There we go. And then move that out of the way here.
Colin, I'm very impressed that you resisted making any horrible time jokes, because every time I use time, I think, I just need a little bit more time. Maybe it's just
yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have the dad jokes on hand tonight. My dad joke game is not strong tonight.
That's quite all right. I think everybody appreciates it. It's just I can't help myself. I'm sorry.
So this, when it's not cooked, it might be a little bit hard to see with the camera angle, but it's kind of an orange color right now. And so if you cook it for about 20 minutes on the stovetop on medium-low heat, covered, then it will become a nice red color, and it will lose a lot of the orangeness that you see here. One thing I wanted to add is in the recipe, it does call for a little bit of baking soda. which always stumps everyone. Baking soda helps to neutralize the acid of the tomatoes. So it takes away some of the acidity of the tomatoes. But it does bake out or cook out when you're cooking it. So you want to put that in just right at the end before you serve it. After the 20 minutes, you can take a fork and get all those pieces of thyme out of there. Time's up, so you take it out. And see, I couldn't resist too. And so you put in the pinch of baking soda. What I always tell people in the class, have 2 baking sodas. So you have one in your fridge that is absorbing all the smells, and then have one that is in your pantry. Do not use the one from your fridge, people. That is so disgusting. You don't want it to smell like whatever your fridge smells like. So that's my big advice for the night. That's why everybody pays so much.
Hey, that is valuable advice. That's right. You should be careful and not make your food taste like the inside of your fridge.
Right. Yeah. Or at least my fridge, anyway.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I am going to put that aside, and I'll cook that later. And then we'll move on to the next soup. Does anybody have any questions at this point or comments before I get started with the next soup?
The last flurry of questions was about salt. So if people have additional questions, you can certainly put them in the chat, and I'm watching them. I had a phone die, so I'm watching the YouTube chat kind of sporadically, but there haven't been any questions across that. I am watching the chat on YouTube and Facebook if anybody's watching us there and is wondering if they ask questions.
Okay. Okay. There are a number of people who are vegan who are also SOS, salt, oil, and sugar-free. So this cookbook, just so you know, the cookbook really does nod to that quite a bit. There's very little oil in the book. I use sesame oil a couple of times in some salad dressings just for a little bit of flavoring, like a tablespoon of that. But for the most part, I really don't use any oil when I'm cooking. Oil is really the highest concentration of calories and fat in anything that you can eat. So, and it's also a very processed, extracted product from something that is natural. But then when you extract it and process it, then it's really not as natural, and it's harder for your body to really know what to do with that. So there is some salt in the book. If you're SOS free and you don't want to use any salt, you can just take that out of the recipe. It's fine. And as far as sugar, there's really very few ingredients, very few times in the cookbook that I use anything for sweetener besides my medjool dates that I love so much. So it is very SOS friendly, just so you know. All right.
So a couple of the questions did come through. One was wondering if you know a calorie count or have any approximation for that, which I don't know if you do.
I don't know, actually. For the soup, the one thing that's going to give it some calories is going to be the cashews. It's certainly a fraction of what it would be if you used oil. You know, I like to follow along to Dr. Michael Greger, a vegan doctor. So, you know, one of the things that he talks about in different studies is, you know, using nuts instead of oil, where, you know, because for most people, they're able to digest nuts very easily. And it's sort of like your body knows what to do with that form of calories, whereas oil, not as much, has a harder time breaking that down because it's such a processed product. Your body doesn't really know what to do with it. So go to nutritionfacts.org. That's a great website, Michael Greger. And he talks all about those studies. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out.
And one other question was about, you know, you're making obviously a bunch of soup tonight. How do you store it? Can you freeze this soup, or does some of the soups freeze better or age better than others?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm sorry I didn't mention that because that's something that I love to do. So I could not possibly eat this much soup. Even with my wife and me, then we would just be liquid for days. So I do plan on freezing a lot of this. So I use the quart mason jars. I use pint mason jars. What I usually like to do is pour it into pints. Just make sure that you're only filling it up to about there. Don't fill it all the way to the top, because when it freezes, it's going to expand and you don't want to break your jars. But yes, all of these soups freeze very well. I haven't had any problems with freezing any of these, even the last one, which we'll go over in a bit. So quart or mason jar, quarter pint mason jars, they freeze. And like, this is, for me, this is like perfect size for lunch. I can throw this in the microwave. I can, leave it out overnight to thaw and just make it on the stove, whatever you want to do. But this is like the perfect serving size for me, because I'm hungry. All right. So the next soup is going to be Lebanese red lentil soup. This is one where I oftentimes use an Instant Pot, which is the electric pressure cooker. It does help to speed these things up. So, this is the kind of thing that everything goes in the blender. You put it in the Instant Pot, turn it on, walk away, and, 10 or 15 minutes later, you have piping hot soup. It's really easy to put together. It's super healthy. It tastes delicious. So there have been a number of times when, I was in a rush trying to make some food for, make a meal for my kids real fast. And, I'm trying to do 3 things at once, come home, throw everything in, blender, throw everything in the Instant Pot, and then it makes it pretty fast. And it's a delicious recipe. So this is going to use a combination of the blender and then some whole ingredients. So first one we're going to do is put in, let's see, we got 6 cups of water. I'm going to put in half of that for the moment, just because it has a hard time blending if there's too much in there. So I'm going to do the cashews again. We got 1/3 of a cup of cashews. I'm going to put that in. Certainly I did not make up Lebanese red lentil soup, clearly. But if you look at traditional recipes for Lebanese red lentil soup, there's usually a lot of oil in it. And so, using the cashews, trying to cut that down quite a bit. So there's the cashews. Going to do another 1 medium yellow onion. Put that in. Just got to rough chop it. Vitamix does all the rest. And let's see, we're going to do 1 clove of garlic here. Put that in. And let's see, 1 small carrot, because again, love the carrots, great nutrition, just blend it right in. And then let's see, 2 green olives. So this one, Lebanese red lentil soup usually has a lot of olive oil in it to make it nice and smooth and creamy. And, as a substitute for olive oil, you can use the cashews. And that is fine. That really replicates the texture of putting in oil with a lot less calories. But one of the things about olive oil is it does have a bit of a taste of olives. So I'm trying to replicate that. 2 green olives. Going to throw that in there. Really mimics just like if it was olive oil, but with a lot less calories. Right?
No pimentos in those olives, huh?
What's that?
No pimentos in the olives.
No. Actually, I use olives for this kind of a recipe. Like if I'm trying to, recreate a little bit of an olive oil taste, but otherwise I can't stand olives. And I'd see them in my refrigerator. I'm like, oh, gross. What are they even doing there?
Even for me, I'm a big olive fiend. So
great. All right, so I'm going to blend this up, and the rest of the ingredients I'm just going to go ahead and put in the pot when I get to that point. But I do have to blend these ingredients first. The food that I make and, the food in the cookbook and everything, I do try to eat as unprocessed as possible. But, exceptions have to be made for vegan treats occasionally. All right, even me. All right, so I'm going to add the rest of the water here. So 6 cups total. And so I'm just adding everything else to the blended ingredients. So we have 1 tablespoon of chopped fresh parsley and chopped fresh mint. So one of the reasons I don't add that to the blender, you don't want to blend the green in because it's going to change the color. And some sort of green tinge soup doesn't necessarily look so appetizing. So I'm just going to leave those in just chopped up, and then it'll cook. Using, if you have only dried, then that's okay. This is one where I would really recommend using the fresh if you can plan ahead at the store and get that fresh mint, that fresh parsley. It makes so much of a difference having the fresh. So I have 2 cups of red lentils, pink lentils. So, you probably see articles, health articles that say you should eat lots of lentils. So it doesn't have to just be those brown, chewy lentils. If you're not a big fan of those, these lentils are fantastic. When they cook, they really kind of start to dissolve and fall apart in the water. So, this isn't going to be like the brown, chewy lentils. This really kind of blends in nicely. So there's the 2 cups of the pink lentils there. And sometimes I will use some bouillon just to kind of add to the taste. This is the kind that I like to use, the Better Than Bouillon flavor here. So this is sort of like a paste, as opposed to a powder or the cubes. Then I really like the flavor of this. So I'll use a tablespoon or 2 of the bouillon just to kind of give it a little bit of extra flavor. That is a bit more of a processed ingredient, so if you want to skip that, you can. I just like the extra flavor that it gives there. So that one's optional. Or if you have a bouillon, like a powdered bouillon that you prefer to use, then you can use that too. So there's the bouillon. I put in here a mixture of different dry spices. So we have 1 teaspoon of cumin. It is so good in this. 1 teaspoon of turmeric, so it really helps to give it a really bright yellow color. Of course, any article you read about health always seems to be talking about turmeric because there's so many health benefits. So, if I can get turmeric into, a number of different things, you don't really taste it in like a teaspoon in a big pot of soup. So that's good. And then you got a teaspoon of the Redmond real salt in there, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper is in there as well. So I'll put all that in here. And then just kind of mix all that together here. Like I said, if you have an Instant Pot, you can just put the lid on at this point and just let it cook for 5 or 10 minutes. Really doesn't take very long. If you have it stovetop, then maybe, like I said, probably about 20 minutes will do it. And, if you take the lid off and just kind of stir it a couple of times, the lentils will cook and it'll kind of firm up. So it'll make it a real nice, thick soup. So that is one of my favorites. Put that aside here. All right, and get this put aside. All right, one thing I wanted to mention with this is you'll see the recipe does call for the juice of 1 lemon. So I will put this in at the end. So with lemon juice, it tends to cook off if it's in a pot of soup. So I save this at the end so you really get that nice punch of lemon taste right at the end. So I will juice that later and then go ahead and put it in when it's all done. So don't forget the lemon at the end there. And I'll get the next soup over here. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that?
There was one person who was wondering about the brand name of the bouillon, which I put a link. It was the Better Than Bouillon. And as you were showing that, I've used that many times myself. I love it too. But it is important to make sure if you're being a little bit quick in the grocery store, to make sure you grab the vegetable one, because they don't just make vegetarian bouillons. They have other non-vegetarian ones.
That's a good point. And most of them are not vegetarian. So I believe they even have 2, there's one that's vegetarian and then one that's vegetable base. And so I think the vegetable base one is not vegan, but the vegetarian one is. Yeah, you just got to read the ingredients, but if you are vegan, then you are used to reading the ingredients constantly on everything.
I'm sure you could also use you could, if you had a favorite veggie broth, you could use that instead of the water and kind of have the effect of having, and skip in the bouillon then, if you just use a nice broth instead.
Yep, Yep, you can certainly do that. All right.
Somebody else was wondering, saying that before when they've made soups with lentils, they've had a good, really good success using apple cider vinegar, and I've done that as well. Different vinegars can really add a nice flavor. They've never tried lemon, and wondering if you could compare kind of, if you've tried, the experience between those two.
I've never tried this soup with apple cider vinegar. I'm sure that it would give it the same similar kind of tanginess to it, but definitely the lemon is going to be a traditional ingredient in Lebanese red lentil soup, which is more of a traditional recipe. It's just I sort of did my whole food spin on that. So
yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So any other questions with that one before the last one?
That's the last question that's come in so far.
Okay.
So I will say, as somebody who loves hot stuff, I always love getting the pickled peppers, and sometimes putting some of those and some of the vinegar that comes with the peppers can be really nice as a finishing element for lentil soups too. So for people,
sounds good. Well, in the next recipe you will enjoy. There's the sriracha.
Yum! There you go.
The soups class is one of my favorite ones to teach in libraries in person because, it's sort of like I bring my Instant Pots with me and cook everything on the spot. And, so I'll make the tomato one first, creamy tomato soup, and put it in the Instant Pot, closes it all up, seals it, and then I move on to the next, and people sort of forget that it's cooking, it's happening. And then, we get towards the end of the class and the soups are finally ready to be able to serve. And I just love to see the reactions on people's faces with these different soups. Definitely the Lebanese red lentil. For a lot of people, they've never had something that tastes like that before. It's not something you normally would find in a family style restaurant or anything. So, for a lot of people, that's the first time that they've ever had that flavor before, and it's so good. And, also with the creamy tomato soup, most people just get the stuff in the can and, you're used to that, but using those fresh tomatoes just gives it such a different taste. It's so fresh and so good. This last one we're going to do.
Really quick, I'm sorry, Colin, I just have one more question that came across, which was thinking about freezing again. If you're making a bunch of this lentil soup and you're going to be putting it away, would you add the lemon juice before you freeze it, or would you save your lemon and add it fresh when you thawed it out?
I would put it in before I freeze it. I think it would be fine in that case. It's just if you're going to cook it for 20 minutes, and it tends to kind of cook it off. So, all right. So speaking of soup recipes that are sort of a traditional, but I put on sort of a whole food vegan spin on that. The last one we're going to do is the fragrant coconut Thai soup. This is always one of my favorites. I actually was a guest chef at a restaurant last fall in was it Roslindale, I think, was close by.
Technically you're over in West Roxbury. It's West on Center.
Yes.
In West Roxbury.
That's it. You'd think I remember since I was there.
It's okay. It's just around the corner from my house, so I know.
Yeah. So this is actually one of the dishes that I served at the restaurant. We did sort of a Thai themed night. So, again, in the classes that I do, this is one that, a lot of people haven't had these flavors before, so it's new to them, and it's the eyes just light up like, wow, this is very different, but it tastes so good. So, all right, so the base of this, we're going to use the blender again. The base of this, we're going to put in 2 cloves of garlic and 2 medium shallots. So that's all in here. Shallots are technically they're an onion, but they're very mild onions. It's a cross in taste between onion and garlic. So I like to use that in here. So put those in. I'm going to put in half a cup. All right, this is the unique ingredient in this one. So I don't use coconut milk because it's an extracted. You have something like coconut is very healthy, very natural. I've heard the claim before that if you're on an island for months, you could eat coconuts for months, and it by itself has enough nutrients to keep you alive, but you would be really sick of coconuts after a while. But so what I like to use is coconut manna. So this, like I said, that's kind of a specialty ingredient. Nativa is the brand that I usually use. This is one that you would find at Whole Foods. I've found it at Ocean State Job Lot randomly before, but it's usually about $8 or $9 at Whole Foods. It is shelf stable, so I will, I don't go to Whole Foods all the time, but occasionally I'll get like, 2 or 3 of those. I use these also in a lot of the dessert recipes in the cookbook as well. So coconut manna is, it's the whole food version of, using coconut milk or something. It's basically, like how you would make peanut butter by just grinding it and, using a food processor. If you put coconut into a food processor and just let it run, scrape it down, let it run, eventually it creates coconut manna. So, of all of the different forms of jarred coconut, like coconut oil, coconut milk, all of that's processed and the fiber is removed, and you're not really getting the benefit of the whole ingredient. So coconut manna, that's what I like to use. Like I said, it is shelf stable, so it lasts a really long time. And I'm going to put in about half a cup of the coconut manna. Sometimes it's also called coconut butter if you see it in the store, but I would say it's coconut manna is what you want to look for. So this, instead of using cans of coconut milk, which again is really kind of an extracted processed version of something that is naturally very healthy.
Colin, there's been a question if there's a substitute for coconut, period. I'm not sure why people avoid coconut, but I'm sure there are maybe allergies or such. If there's ways to get around the coconut that you found.
Just skip this soup entirely, man.
It's
No.
integral. Yeah.
I suppose that, you could use plant-based milk if you wanted to. Or you could use like cashews instead to make it nice and creamy. Some people really don't like the taste of coconut, but I did find out though that coconut is, it is not a nut. It's actually considered a dry drupe, D-R-U-P-E. So people who are allergic to nuts usually are not allergic to coconut because it is a different thing entirely. It is droopy. All right. So let's see. We got 2 tablespoons of, you can use regular ginger for this, or if you really want to get authentic, then you would use Thai ginger, which is called galangal. So that is definitely not going to be something that you normally would find in a supermarket. Like I said, you can use regular ginger if you want. It's not critical in this recipe, but galangal, what I usually do is order it. You can see it looks like ginger. It's Thai ginger. I will order it online. I'll get it usually on eBay, and they put it in a cold pack and then send it, and then I will just cut it into pieces and then put that in the freezer. So I always have some galangal on hand. I like to make Thai curries, and using real Thai ginger instead of regular root ginger that we have in the supermarket is essential to the taste.
So Colin, I just put a link in the chat for a couple of things. Again, I think we've got you spoiled. I know you're up in Portland, but we've got several awesome Asian grocery stores in Quincy. So I put a link to Cam Man, which is I've bought galangal there. It's very easy. I think they stock it all the time.
Oh, very good.
So it's a great source for that. I think they probably don't have coconut manna, but you can get that at Good Health, which I also put a link for coconut manna, not for Good Health in the link, because they're just a great local health food store that if they don't have it on the shelf, I'm sure they could get it for people too. So a couple local shout outs for us.
Whole Foods or like your regular or local health food stores, like that one should have it.
Yeah. There's also a shout out for the 99. We've got another great. I'll put a link for that too. So There is a
Okay.
question about galangal, if it's hotter or spicier than ginger, and if you need to adjust your quantities if you're using different types of ginger, if you've noticed that.
I haven't noticed that it's really hotter or spicier. It definitely has a very different flavor to it. So if you ever taste ginger and then Thai ginger side by side, the galangal, it's totally different. So in this recipe, you can substitute. It's okay. It's not critical, but to me, galangal has much more of a like a woody, like almost kind of pine flavor to it, which is just so different from regular ginger. So I just pulled a couple of pieces out of my freezer to be able to use. It is pretty hard. It's not quite as soft as regular ginger is. So this one, if you don't have a powerful blender like Vitamix, then you want to let it run for a few minutes just so it can blend everything in. The other thing here is going to be a tablespoon of minced lemongrass, fresh lemongrass. What I like to do is buy stalks of it and then just put it in the freezer. It keeps very well in the freezer. So I used to buy lemongrass and not use it all, and then it would go bad in the refrigerator. But I just freeze it now, and it's so I don't have any waste that way. So 2-inch thumb of ginger, and then about just a couple of pieces of the chopped lemongrass. Put that in there. I'm going to put in, let's see, where's my dates? There's 3 medjool dates here for a little bit of sweetness. This is supposed to be have a little bit of sweetness in the soup. I'll put those in there. Make sure with the medjool dates, make sure you take the pits out if they're not already pitted, because the Vitamix is just going to turn them into little mini pits, and that is the pits. All right, so I'm going to put in 4 cups of water. Get this blended up. There's 3. So these are the ingredients that we're going to blend, and then we're going to put all of the cut ingredients in afterwards. So just do this for a minute.
I'll also put a link in the chat, and we had somebody who was chiming in on Facebook as well that they've also got galangal at Cam Man, and we think Ranch 99, which is in North Quincy, also it's a big grocery store too, and we think that they probably have galangal too. I actually need to go and spend some time exploring their shelves. But, yeah.
I would love to give a shout out to Asian supermarkets in general. When I was living in Worcester, we had a couple, and as a vegan, the smell of all the seafood is kind of strong when I go through the door. But if you get past that, there's so many. It's so much fun to go in there. There's different kinds of produce that you don't find in regular supermarkets. Usually the prices are really good, really affordable. And it's just like an adventure. Every time you go in, it's awesome. So absolutely, if there's those in the area, then absolutely have fun. Go in. It's great.
Yeah, no, they're definitely quite an awesome Quincy resource, and it's great to have. We're spoiled because we've got so many. So yeah, if folks are watching us and aren't familiar, have joined us from outside Quincy, we're showing our Quincy pride right here. So so please come on over and check out the grocery stores. It's a great. And then there's some great restaurants that you can enjoy some food too if you get hungry along the way. I'd be happy to talk about that too. Yeah, certainly love to talk about and show off our hometown pride.
Yeah, and if you don't live in an area where there's ethnic supermarkets nearby, then like I said, it's really easy to just order the galangal online, and it comes fresh, and you can just put it in the freezer, and it lasts a really long time. So that is certainly an option as well. All right, so this is already smelling fantastic. The lemongrass and the Thai ginger, it gives it such a great smell. But we are not done. We have more ingredients to add. So I'm going to add the juice of 2 limes. So I've already juiced those. So just like the lemon, if you want to save this until the end to really give it a strong punch of taste, then you can do that. The reason that I will add this in now instead of waiting is this soup, I generally don't cook it as long because I'm putting in a number of fresh ingredients that really don't have to cook for very long. So, I might cook this for like 5 or 10 minutes at the max. So it's really not, going to boil off all that lime flavor. But, if you want to save it till the end, you can do that. So there's the juice of 2 limes. Nice thing about limes is they don't have seeds. So it's easier to juice than a lemon.
Now, what do you think about, not from concentrate, but lime juice in a bottle or lemon juice in a bottle too?
Oh, right. Yeah, you remind me. I always like to make fun of everybody when they use that. No, it's fine. You can use that. I just, again, coming from a fresh perspective, if you can use a couple of fresh limes, obviously it's going to taste a lot better than whatever is in that bottle, and whatever makes it last for months and months, I don't understand. But, this way you get lime juice without all the preservatives. So normally I would add in a large handful of shiitake mushrooms, sliced into strips. But I am going to skip that as my wife is not really a fan of the mushrooms, and I don't want to get in trouble. So I'm already putting cilantro in it. So. All right. Going to put in 3 scallions, which I've already diced up really nicely there. That gives it a wonderful flavor as well. All right. It's out of the water, so the wire's not in the sink. All right, we're going to put in 2 tablespoons of tamari. So tamari is similar to soy sauce. I don't really like to use soy sauce. Tamari is a less processed sort of version of soy sauce. Tamari is only soy. So it's for people who have gluten sensitivities or are gluten-free, then you can use tamari, whereas you would not really be able to use soy sauce. And also tamari, to me, it has a sort of a deeper, richer flavor than soy sauce. It also provides a natural source because it is a fermented soy product. It does provide some sodium as well. So it's a nice salty flavor. So
what about, so one person asked about Bragg's, which I know you're familiar with.
Yeah.
If you could use that instead.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I prefer the taste of tamari over Bragg's, but if you want to use Bragg's, then go for it. Yep. So like I said, this is kind of a chunky soup, so there's going to be a number of different fresh ingredients that I'm putting in. Next one is going to be a block of extra firm tofu. I've already cut it up into little cubes here. This does not have to cook. It's fine like it is. So I put it in, but I'm just saying, like, you don't have to cook it extra because tofu is already ready to go. All right, and let's see. Next one is going to be a teaspoon of the sea salt. So let's see. I'll add that in later because you don't need to watch me do that. Now I'm going to put in a tablespoon of sriracha, or if you are Clayton, the entire bottle. So I'll just do a squirt in there.
There's a couple questions about the tofu, and if you did any prep work beforehand, if you pressed it or froze it, or how did you prepare the tofu before putting it in the soup?
In this, I did not freeze it or press it. It's going into the soup, so it's just going to absorb the liquid anyway. So I didn't press it. And freezing it is always an interesting way to change the texture of tofu, but in this case, it's just in small cubes, and I usually don't freeze it. I usually don't care about doing that. It's kind of an extra step, but if you want to do it, then you can definitely do that. I'm going to put in a cup of the mung bean sprouts. So I'll put those in. Mung bean sprouts are sometimes a little tricky to find in a regular supermarket. I'm always able to find it, except if I'm about to teach a soups class, and then I can never find it. So mung bean sprouts, they have great nutrition. They're really good for you. They really don't last very long. So if you're going to get I would like double the soup so that you can use all of the bean sprouts in it, so that it does not go bad in your refrigerator. Because really, for me, I don't know, they only last a couple of days in the refrigerator before they start to get funny. So I'll put that in there. That's the bean sprouts. I love the taste that it adds to that. I'm going to put in half a cup of cilantro here. All right. There we go. And we're going to put in a cup of cherry tomatoes that I've cut in half. So that's really nice. And again, only cooking this for 5 or 10 minutes. So it's really not, it's not going to make the tomatoes start to dissolve or anything. Actually, I am going to add, this is not in the recipe, but I had some zucchini. And so I'm just going to throw in some zucchini as well, just to use that up, because I got it from the farm this week. All right, so I mix all of that up. And yeah, you can't really see it very well, but I'm going to mix that up and then cook that on the stove for, like I said, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, just to get things nice and hot. And this also, even though it's got the cherry tomatoes in it and everything, and the bean sprouts, I thought for sure this would not be one that would freeze well. But I've done it, and miraculously, I don't know how, it does freeze just fine. So,
how many servings do you usually get? How many, how many servings do you get for each of these soups, approximately?
1 for me.
Okay, for if you and I aren't eating them, for the regular,
yeah,
other palate.
Well, this one's got 4 cups of water in it, and then the bulk of a lot of veggies. So, this one is probably going to be maybe 2 or 3 quarts worth. So it would really be a fair amount. I mean, my kids would have also it as one giant serving, but if you were not feeding hungry teenagers, then for normal sized stomachs, then I would say, this soup probably makes enough for 4 people, if it's not like the main dish, if it's, just the appetizer or something. And I don't know, I'd say fairly similar. The red lentil soup, probably 6 to 8 servings. The tomato, maybe a little bit less. It might be more like 4 servings for that. Yeah. All right. So those are the 3 soups. Let's see. Make my publisher happy. Healthy Vegan Cookbook. All of the recipes are in there. I have, I think, about 10 or 12 different whole food soup recipes. So this is just kind of a sample of that. There are 30 different smoothie recipes, smoothies that taste, breakfast smoothies that taste like dessert. So I have lots of those in there. And then I have 30 different sauce recipes, which we've done in one of the other classes. So the main thrust of the book is smoothies, breakfast smoothies, and then sauces as well. So there's that. There's also the ebook version of it. I think it's like $8 or something, so you can get that on Amazon. And then I'm so sorry that I cannot reach through the screen and give you all samples of this because it's so good.
Not nearly as sorry as we are that we can't receive them. But people are definitely, I should let you know, people are sending me messages through the chat just saying what a great presentation, and they really enjoyed this tonight, Colin. So thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. In my humble kitchen, sorry, I don't have a fancy set or anything, but this is my kitchen. That's where I cook.
Great things can come from humble places, and I think it's awesome and very inspirational, Colin. So you have nothing to apologize for. Thank you for sharing. Great. So much fun. So.
Right.
Well, I'm not seeing any other questions come in, so I think you should go and put some soup away and enjoy your evening. And I'm going to go and find some dinner myself, because that's what I was madly putting together when everything came crashing and I realized I needed to be here with you all. So it's been delightful spending this time with you, Colin, and with everybody who joined us. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. And have a great night, everybody. Thanks for joining in. And thanks to Boston Vegetarian Society and Evelyn for having us as well.